Hi, I'm going for renfaire. That's why I look like this. Let me show you my hanfu. Yeah, it's a lot of fabric. It's very difficult to walk, but at least it's not like, you know, a corset, so fine. Today I'm going to talk about 8 books. These are books that I would classify as being strange and unusual reads. Something that lies towards more the realm of possibility, but not so much the realm of plausibility. So book 1, Swallows by Natsuo Kirino. This is quite different from her other works. Maybe you already know this name because you've read Grotesque, Out, Real World, perhaps even The Goddess Chronicles. Swallows is definitely a lot less dark compared to her other translated novels, but it raises similar questions about how women are assigned value based on a complicated system that weighs their purity, desirability, autonomy. The main character is a 29-year-old woman called Riki. She's currently struggling to make ends meet. She's living in Tokyo and she doesn't want to go back to her hometown in Hokkaido because to her there is no future for her there. She's not educated enough to have qualifications, which then limits her career choices. We see her constantly worrying about money, stressing about a few hundred yen, trying to save money by eating less. And I feel that this book really goes into the details of her poverty. She is malnourished because she can't afford to feed herself, and she has a colleague who tells her, you know, maybe you should just go into sex work, and she doesn't really want to do that. Her friend, the one that suggested that to her, has a long-term on and off boyfriend, but this boyfriend is like leeching off of her and the money that she earns using sex work. This friend then suggests to her, why don't you do like an egg donation, because it's lucrative, you can earn a lot of money really fast, like get rich quick kind of scheme. And Riki, after like some deliberation, she decides to go for the consultation. When she is there, the person in charge actually asks her if she's willing to be an illegal surrogate instead, because she resembles the wife of a couple who have been trying to conceive. So the wife that she resembles is called Yuko. Yuko had too many failed attempts, so her reproductive organs are damaged. She and her husband cannot have biological children, and actually Yuko is like totally fine with that. She doesn't need children. She's very happy with having just her career, but her husband is the one who insists that they must have biological children. Even if he was the one who was infertile, he would have wanted her to get pregnant. To him, it's very important that his children are related to either of them, but of course it's more desirable if the children are related to him, because he wants to shape and mold his future child, kind of like build a child, you know. So Yuko is actually really torn, but her husband, whose name is Motoi, coerced her to agree to this illegal surrogacy project. And she also does have her own wish to start a family, but of course it's not as strong as his. When they finally get to know each other, the three of them, she tries to befriend Riki, but it's very difficult for them to have any kind of a real friendship or a real connection, because at the end of the day, this is like an employer-employee situation. And on top of that, Yuko's mother-in-law is a huge bitch. She's probably the reason why her son turned out the way he is, so he's definitely a mummy's boy. And this mother-in-law of hers has never approved of Yuko because she doesn't like how Yuko is a career woman. She expects her daughter-in-law to just stay at home and take care of the husband and have children and, you know, just be like a conservative, traditional Japanese woman. If you compare Yuko to Motoi, it's very obvious that the wife is a much better person than the husband, because she's really tormented about the ethics of this bargain that they made. She sees Riki as a person. She tries her best not to see her as just a walking womb, which is actually what Motoi sees Riki as. But at the same time, Riki is not very likable, and she's also not in like the right headspace to build a friendship or any kind of relationship with somebody else. But on top of that, she also engages in a lot of self-sabotage. So for example, one of the conditions of her agreeing to be a surrogate is that she shouldn't have any sexual relations with other people, but she goes ahead and she has sex with this guy that she used to have an affair with. He's married, by the way. This jeopardizes her surrogacy. It makes you wonder, like, did she do it on purpose? Did she do it on purpose because, like, deep down she doesn't want to be a surrogate and she's hoping that she can get out of this contract, you know what I mean? Like, she sold her body. So in the aftermath of that, she's unthinkingly lashing out against the rules that her employer laid out for her because she resents them, and she also resents the fact that she sold away her own autonomy. I think this is something that everyone will have different opinions on. How much control are you entitled to if you hire a woman to be your surrogate, if you pay her to carry your child? Can you control whether or not she leaves the house? Can you control what she eats? Like, is this something that you can dictate or not? Yes, it is a business arrangement, but everybody will have a different idea of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. So the three main characters are Riki, Yuko, Motoi. All three of them constantly go back and forth on this decision. They decide one thing and then they change their minds like the next day, and then they change it back again. So Riki, she agrees to be a surrogate, and then she chickens out, and then she gets persuaded again to continue with this. Yuko at first decides that she will raise the kid, and then she's like, actually I don't really want to raise this kid, it's not even my kid, so I'm going to divorce my husband. And then after that she changes her mind again, and she's like, I'm going to raise this child with my husband, we're going to start anew. Motoi, he realizes that he cannot control this surrogate, so he's like, actually maybe I don't really want a surrogate. But then in the end he changes his mind again, and then he follows through with the original plan. If you expected this to be a bit more like fast-paced, a bit more decisive action, then this book might feel a little bit like tedious for you, because the characters are kind of wishy-washy about where they stand. Up till the very end, they can't really seem to decide what to do. You don't really know what the final ending is until literally the last few pages. But I do think that it is worthwhile to be patient with this book, because the author is trying to show the thought processes of the characters, and it's very normal, right, for actual people in real life to be undecided about something, to have second thoughts, to have doubts. Even their underlying motivations are in flux, because this isn't a casual endeavor. We're talking about bringing human beings into the world. It's not something to be overly confident about. In the end, Riki has twins, one boy and one girl. She asks if she can spend the first few months with the children before she gives them up. And the couple, at first, they are very eager to just, grab the babies that they paid for and then start anew. But they try their best to do the decent, the human thing and accede to this request. In the end, Riki, she decides to keep one of the children, leaves the other one behind, and then she runs back home to Hokkaido. I felt that this ending was a good one, even though I don't feel like it is a happy one. It's really convenient that she has twins, so both parties can sort of like split it down the middle, right? It's like that parable in the Bible about the king who has to split the baby. Some recommended companion reads if you are interested in reading more contemporary translated Japanese fiction about this specific topic of reproduction. Then you can also read Vanishing World by Sayaka Murata and Breast and Eggs by Mieko Kawakami. Next book, Love Story from the End of the World by Juhea Kim. So this is a collection of 10 stories, set possibly in the same universe as ours, because it feels a lot like our current one, just years in the future, not too far future, like a near-ish future, and everything is like 10 times worse. It's quite a bleak collection, because it shows how humans have quite literally ruined the earth, made it unlivable, not just for themselves, but also for numerous other species. So for example, in one of the stories, the ice caps have already literally melted, but there is still a corporation trying to drill for fucking oil. The narrators in the stories come from all over the world. I was very impressed by the range. I was very impressed also by the ventriloquistic quality of the stories. So for example, there is one story where the narrator is African. There's another one where the narrator is Yakama. Her stories are also set all over the world. It's set in the US, Korea, France, Africa, the Atlantic Ocean, Southeast Asia, London, Norway. So in one story, human beings are living in these things called a bio-ark. You know an ark, it's from the Bible, right? It's like Noah's Ark. This bio-ark is constantly on the move because land itself has become inhospitable to human life. Even on these ships, people are still talking about themselves as if they come from a certain country, like from a certain nationality. They still assign these labels to themselves, even though technically everybody is nationless already. I felt that that was like a reaction to their feelings of displacement. There is another story that imagines that this particular country in Southeast Asia was turned into the world's landfill, and there will be foreigners who come to this country to gawk at these horrible living conditions, to pity them, and it's like to help them feel more superior. Another story had this concept that I I've sort of seen before, which is that there is a dome. It's called a biodome. It covers a city. In this story, Korea created a biodome to protect only certain cities, not every city. And the point is to keep out like this harmful sand that makes people sick and makes like babies come out with birth defects. But it's impossible to keep it out. There is like this sense that this biodome is not going to always work and always be there. It's just a stopgap measure. Some recommended companion reads for if you are interested in reading more Korean speculative fiction. Roadkill by Amil. I really love this collection. I recommend it to everybody. Speculative fiction, some are a bit more fantastical. There's this one story in here that's really similar to the biodome, which is called Welcome to the Alps Grand Park. It's set in a futuristic Korea where there are these giant air purifying towers being built. Only the upper echelons of society can afford to stay in these air purifying towers, and they want to make it like a gated residence to keep out the riffraff because all these people who don't live there are showing up to enjoy the facilities. There are people who stay in the shade of the air purifying towers, and I mean the impurities have to go somewhere, right? So these people who stay in the shade, they are suffering and they have horrific health problems as a result. I feel like the point of this story is to show that people are ultimately really selfish. And it's not about being deserving, right? It's actually all about luck, about being lucky enough to be born into generational wealth. Another Korean speculative fiction novel that I would recommend is Tower by Bae Myung-hun. It's set in a ginormous skyscraper called the Beanstalk. But this Beanstalk building is more of a vertical city. It has its own economy, it has its own government, its own police force. It's self-sufficient. It has its own cultures. It even has its own subcultures depending on which level you stay on. The higher up you stay, the more rich and powerful you are. Book 3, SUNBIRTH by An Yu. I was really excited to get the ARC for this book. So if you've read her other books, you know that she writes stories that are largely realistic, but they take this one thing that is a little bit off and the author pushes it into the realm of the fantastical. So in her previous novel, Ghost Music, there is a woman. The woman has like these weird dreams and there are mushrooms like sprouting up everywhere. That is the magical realism element of it. In SUNBIRTH, the magical realism element is that sun has been slowly disappearing over the past decades. It's just like shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. So the setting itself is quite familiar if you've read enough Chinese translated fiction, but this book is not translated from Chinese. It's written in English, but I do feel like that it borrows from the conventions of Chinese fiction, which is why it reads like it's translated. So this small town, somewhere in China, it's cut off from the rest of the world. It has a police force, which is like just a handful of people. Everybody knows everybody. We don't know much about this town other than the fact that beyond its borders seems to be an endless desert that people are very reluctant to enter. There is a lake, which is where a lot of the stuff actually happens. And like I said, the sun is disappearing. It didn't disappear a lot in the past decade, but suddenly it started accelerating in its disappearance, which then gives the novel a the end times are coming kind of vibe. For example, there's a woman, she's pregnant, she's supposed to give birth, but she acts all cheerful and optimistic. One day she just hangs herself. So it really does have like a end times are here atmosphere. Just as the sun is disappearing, people's heads are starting to transform into like mini suns, you know, so like their head just becomes a sun. And it's so bright. It's like fucking bright. This is something that is a mystery. It's unexplainable. Even until the end, it is unexplainable. I think that this novel is really full of ambiguity and secrecy. So if you're reading and you're hoping for answers, if you're the kind of reader, everything needs to be clearly explained by the end of the novel, then this is not for you. You will be frustrated. So the protagonist, she runs a TCM shop. You know TCM, traditional Chinese medicine? She sells herbs and stuff. She's trying to figure out like, what the hell is going on. And she finds out that actually this happened like years ago and that her own relative was involved in one of the incidents that happened years ago. There was even a photograph, but then there was also a big cover-up because I think they were afraid that it was contagious. They wanted to like prevent it from happening, but like too bad it's happening again. And it's happening in an even faster rate. It becomes impossible to cover up because people are just literally turning into suns on the damn street. The rest of the townspeople, they get scared and then they start rioting and they loot her shop, they loot the other shops, they like kill each other, they stampede. But in the end, they just kind of like accept it as an inevitability and they just let themselves turn into suns. And it's just like, okay, I give up on life already, and then they just turn into a sun. So the ending is kind of strange. Not everybody turns into the sun, but the people that I guess give up and do turn into suns, they merge together and they become this like giant sun mecha. It's like a giant human being that's like standing just standing there doing nothing. You know, it's like Power Rangers. You get like these 5 people and then they merge and then suddenly you get this giant person standing there the size of Ultraman. Something like that, except it's less cool and it's unexplained. Also, this sun giant is just standing there, like literally just standing there, making it like bright as heck. And then one day he's like, okay, I'm done standing here, and he walks into the lake and he disappears. That's the ending. Yeah, I laughed, but I do realize that there are people who don't like this ending. It's like not clear enough, it's not neat enough, but I like it. It's so weird. So your recommended companion read would be Hunter by Zhang, which is a collection of short stories by this author that I really like, and it's translated by a translator that I also really like, who's in Singapore. It's got Jeremy Tiang. So Hunter has like a similar aura, small town mystery. His characters feel like they carry with them the history of their ancestors. But some of the stories are also quite fantastical and absurd even. For example, there's this short story in this collection called Premonition. There's an alien who tells a man that he needs to return a stolen sentence from generations ago, or he's going to use his special alien spaceship to flood the entire town and kill everybody. Yeah, very interesting. Okay, book 4, Where Are You Really From by Chou. This is a collection of short stories. I was really anticipating this book because we're talking about the Chou. Everybody and their mother has read this orientation. You know what I mean? So when I found out she had a short story collection coming out, I was like, I am definitely going to read this book. It turned out to be a 5-star read for me. And these 7 stories, they felt a little bit like a flex. Like the author was trying to show people, I can write more than just one thing. I can write any genre and I can write it well. It makes me really excited for her future works because I felt that she really did show that she could write anything she wanted. Honestly, if she pivoted and she wanted to write like a fantasy trilogy, I think she could do it. I really think she could. Yeah, I would read it. Silk Punk? Silk Punk. So my favorite story in this collection, even though they're all really good, is You Put a Rabbit on Me. It's about this woman who has this dream of moving to Paris and living her best life in Paris, the romantic city of love. She gets a job as an au pair, but then the moment she lands in Paris, her life just like goes sideways. She loses her luggage, finds out that she's actually not staying with her employer. Her employer put her up in some like dingy ass apartment that she's supposed to share with a roommate who is like non-existent at the moment. And then the kid that she's taking care of is not like a sweet little darling. He is really precocious and critical, makes her life difficult. She's struggling in her French class. One day she runs into a woman who looks exactly like her doppelganger, and they are almost exactly the same other than the fact that this other Elaine, she is born and raised in Paris. She seems to be superior to her in every way, from her upbringing to her education to her job, and she's also like effectively bilingual, unlike our main character Elaine A. They become obsessed with each other in a I want to say like self-cessed kind of way. Yeah, a little bit self-cessy. They become codependent, but then that runs up. And then they start to resent and fear each other. They feel like the boundaries of their personal identities are being transgressed. They start to lash out at each other. They just start to see the other person as becoming very triggering, like infringing on their sense of self, which is expected. So Elaine A thinks that Elaine B is trying to steal her life and run off to the US. She chases her down to the airport, and then they like, you know, start getting into a brawl, and we don't know who wins. We don't. But we do know that one of the Elaines remain, and this Elaine then gets on the plane, but is it Elaine A or is it Elaine B? We don't know. I love that ambiguity. It's really trippy. I really enjoyed this story. Another story called The Dollhouse. It's about a house in which women from China, they come over when they are pregnant but not visibly so, with the purpose of giving birth there so that their child can get US citizenship. It's a prison in many ways. They have different motivations, but a lot of them are there because they don't feel like they have any other choice. Families send them there to do this on purpose. How little agency some women really have when it comes to their reproductive futures. Happy Endings was this really good sci-fi spec fic story. It's about this white man who goes to Southeast Asia for sex tourism. So this is set in the future. Technology and society is supposed to be very progressed already, right? But some things still don't change. Like white men seeing Asian women as sex objects for consumption, for purchasing, the exploitation of vulnerable women. He looks for his next vacation spot, he researches, he comes across this place called Happy Endings. He goes there, he finds out that, oh look, it's like a VR sort of thing, you know, they put a headset onto him. And he's thinking, okay, this is going to be like VR sex, right? Well, it's not. It's actually a trap just for him, designed by this woman who was misused by him in the past. She was just waiting and waiting for her chance to make him suffer. Mail Order Love is another short story here. It's surprisingly sweet. I really loved it because it didn't go where I thought it would go. So there's this old guy who is a widower. He doesn't want to be alone anymore. Orders a mail order bride from Taiwan. This is in a future where people are not allowed to travel or migrate or immigrate as easily anymore. So the only way for, you know, a woman from Taiwan to come to the US and get a green card is to become a mail order bride. What that means is that she wears a wedding dress, she wears a diaper, and then she lies down in a cardboard box for the entire flight, which is like what, 16 hours. The box has like holes, breathing holes, and she's transported as cargo because people are not allowed in, but objects are. And she doesn't get to eat, you know, the entire time, and she doesn't get to pee or like take a shit. She's younger than the guy's daughter. He really wanted her to be a wife, and his idea of being a wife is basically somebody who is like his old wife, somebody who will watch TV shows with him, someone who will cook for him, someone he can go out on dates with. He's just really lonely. But this woman, you know, she's like, I made it all the way to America, I'm going to improve my life, I'm going to get an education, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to make friends, I'm going to practice my English. So they have very different motivations. She actually ends up sort of living like his teenage daughter instead of his wife, and he's the one paying for it all, of course. And I think like it raises questions, right, of this concept of a mail order bride. Can you buy love? Can you buy companionship? Perhaps you can buy, like, you know, someone's passage into your country, but to what extent can you ask them to play the role that you ask them to play? Like, is it reasonable to ask this wife of yours that you paid for to stay in your house all day? I think like the really nice thing about this is that this man wasn't lecherous at all. He wasn't looking for sex, he wasn't looking, you know, for anything. He really loves his dead wife, and he just really wanted a companion, that's all. He's been relying on his wife all his life, so he just tries to fill the gap that his wife left behind. If you're looking for something similar to this, I would recommend She's Always Hungry by Eliza Clark. It's similar in terms of like tone and range, but of course the stories are quite different in terms of content. I think it's really difficult to look for a close match because this collection is just so unique. Book 5, Ghost Cities by Siang. So to start out, I just want to say that this book reminded me of Paul Auster's The New York Trilogy. But it's not similar in terms of like structure or plot or setting or anything. Like if you really want to do a one-to-one comparison, there is nothing similar, but the feeling of reading it is similar. I loved it, and I was like really in awe of the imagination behind the story. I found it really creative, and like as I was reading it, I just knew that this was a masterpiece. It's challenging for sure, but I do think that it's still accessible for a general readership, and it's immensely rewarding for the literary reader. It's very difficult to capture the essence of such an ambitious work, but I'm just going to try to give you the gist of it. The most important thing that you need to know is that this book is really, really funny. It's so funny. But not in a lowbrow comedy slapstick kind of way. This is more of like a satire. It's like absurdism. So there are two narratives. One is set in a fictional ancient China in an imperial city with a palace and everything, and one is set in the present. So in the story in the past, it's reminiscent of like a fable, you know, or a myth, archetypal story of an emperor in a palace with an empress and his ministers and his eunuchs. You know, it's a very standard sort of setup. There is an epistolary slant to it in a way that a lot of the plot points are told to the reader through announcements made by the ministers, made by the eunuchs. It's just so entertaining to read. You just have to read it. I'm so serious. Just go out and get a copy and read it. So in this fictional imperial China, the emperor is like delusional. He's horrible, and he sends his own brother into like this multi-story prison that he made called like the 9 Circles of Hell. So when someone pisses him off, go to the 9 Circles of Hell. The brother's wife is the true hero, actually. Single-handedly preserved and revived like literacy in the country after the emperor decreed for everything to be burnt, as emperors in the past have often done so. She also lives inside a labyrinth, which is a very complex prison that the emperor made an architect build. So there are very obvious comparisons to Greek myths. Her son was rescued and raised by the architect in the countryside in the end, he manages to decipher the messages that his mother was sending to him through the books that she was writing, and he goes off to search for her. I want to believe that they are reunited. So the narrative set in the present is about a character with the exact same name as the author, Siang. He gets fired from his job because he was pretending to be fluent in Chinese, but actually he was like using Google Translate or like online translators to help him. After he gets fired, his ex-colleagues, ex-bosses, for some reason, they are very unprofessional and they start like bitching about him on Chinese social media. He becomes a trending topic known as like #BadChinese. So he turns into like a celebrity overnight, not for good reasons though. And because he's not on Chinese social media and because he can't read Chinese, he doesn't know what people are saying about him. He just knows that people are recognizing him. He cannot really grasp the scale of his notoriety. There is this director called Byebye. He brings Siang onto a film set the size of an entire city called Portmanteau. A pun, I'm sure you understand. Portmanteau is literally the size of a city. All these people, they are actually being paid to act their role. Byebye is trying to force Siang to be an actor in his city for his new film. So both the Imperial City and Portmanteau, they have bad leaders, heavy surveillance, and there are also these little acts of resistance by the people on the ground that hints at, you know, the inevitable downfall of such a system. I don't think it's a coincidence that the Imperial City borrows from the romanticized, imagined concepts or imagery shown in palace dramas, because it's all a construct, you know, no matter how historically accurate the costumes are, it's all a construct. There is no way to recapture the past. So it's all made up. It's all somebody's imagination. Even if it has already become reified in the popular imagination, it is still something made up. So this fake Imperial City, even though it seems to be referencing a real Imperial City that existed in the past, is actually not real. Similarly, Portmanteau, the city itself, is also a construct. Everybody there is just a hired actor. And if nothing is real, then why bother with authenticity? Why not just have fun? So anyway, this was like a really incredible book. I am definitely going to reread it again in the future after I get a copy of my own. Next book, Red Sword by Bora Chung. So this book got a lot of unnecessary hate online, and I do think it's just a mismatch of reader expectations, because everybody was expecting or perhaps hoping for something like Cursed Bunny, which is a magical realism, weird girl, short story fiction situation, but this is not. This is like a novel, and it's a sci-fi spec fic. I mean, if you really wanted something similar to Cursed Bunny, the author also has another book that just came out called Midnight Timetable, which is magical realism, short stories. But Red Sword is completely different, but I loved it. Yeah, I think I might even like it more than the short story collections, which I already like a lot. I just don't think it's fair to compare like apples to oranges. So this story is set in another planet. There are some prisoners of war. They're brought there in a spaceship. They're forced to fight these really overpowered white aliens on a planet that's entirely white. They are the invaders. The people that are forced to fight, they are basically slaves, and they belong to this galactic empire that tries to like colonize planets, and they want to expand their colony, because what empire does not want to expand? The whole point of an empire is expansion. Very, very quickly, in chapter 2, you'll realize that these people are like clones. Every time they die, they're just brought back again. They're basically like disposable. It doesn't matter if they die or if they get sick. The empire can just make more of them. But even though they are clones, they have like implanted memories that are not real. They are very, very human. They persist in being human, which is ironic because they are as manufactured as they come. But they persist in loving each other, in protecting each other. They persist in resisting. Whereas the people, the so-called originals that are in charge of them, they don't seem to have as much human emotion. And actually, you know, I got a feeling that it's very likely that their direct superiors are also clones, even if they don't know or accept that fact. I really like this book because the message is very, very clear, which is kill the Imperials, not befriend the Imperials, or not kill only the bad Imperials but then save the good Imperials. Like, no, there is no such thing as a good Imperial. You gotta kill them all. There is no like other way, you know. You cannot negotiate with somebody who doesn't even see you as a human being. So this is another book that I would definitely reread when I get a physical copy. A similar book that I would recommend to like, you know, read and compare is Audition by Pip Adam. Not the one that won the Booker Prize, by Katie Kitamura. This other one that like nobody knows about. It's not very similar other than the fact that it's set in space, but I do think that it would be interesting to compare them in terms of the concept of incarceration and exactly how do you measure the value of a person. So in Audition, there are 3 people who are living in a spaceship. They are giants. Every moment that they don't talk, they are getting bigger, so they are squeezed on a spaceship actually, and the only way to get the spaceship to progress through space to get to their intended destination is to keep talking. So they have to talk. They talk, and in their talking we get to find out a little bit more about them. We find out that there are 3 people. We find out that they were packed off and sent into space because they were getting too big and human beings were getting very uncomfortable with these giants. So the giants were then like captured and drugged and re-educated, which is brainwashing lah, you know, like turn them into compliant creatures who will not exercise their size and their strength. We also find out that these people, they have committed crimes. So I was like, oh, this is about evolution. Yeah, it is about evolution. And the question here is, are the punishments deserved? Whether or not it is right to deny a criminal's humanity. This spaceship then lands on a magical planet that shows them another way to live. The people there don't treat them as criminals, give them opportunities to contribute, to slowly integrate into their society. It's a really compassionate and forgiving worldview on this other planet, and they are no longer giants. They are no longer treated as people who take up too much space and who need to be gotten rid of. It's quite an interesting book, a little bit challenging. Book 7, Women Seated, by Zhang Yueran. So this book made a lot of people online upset because it was not marketed well enough. I think it gave the impression that there will be more drama, but the drama was quite understated, and whatever secret was hinted at was actually like revealed very early on. And what you're reading about is the aftermath. So there's this woman called Elaine. She's been a nanny to a rich couple's son for almost a decade. Because she took care of the child for so long, she basically loves the child. It's very difficult to not love a child that you take care of every single day. However, she needs money. She wants to start her life anew. So she plans like a fake kidnapping to extort money from the employers. But actually the boy is like safe the entire time. He has no idea that this is going on. But she's really unlucky. The day that she wanted to do it and she nearly did it, her employer gets arrested. And then her boyfriend, who was the one that was trying to help her carry out this plan, he steals all the money from their joint bank account and then he just abandons her. So she has no choice. She has to like bring the boy back to the house and continue to take care of him as if nothing happened. She even lets the boy like adopt a goose, but the boy wants to believe that it is a swan. It feels a little bit like a metaphor for his childlike faith in the adults around him. It is also this then that makes it difficult for Yueling to be like the other adults. She cannot just harden her heart and do what is best for herself. She keeps doing what is best for the boy because she can't sacrifice him. So in the end, the mother manages to return, and the mother is crazy trying to look for this hidden thumb drive that she thinks will like exonerate her. Her husband told her that, you know, this thumb drive is like a failsafe. She thinks that the goose ate the thumb drive, so she kills the goose, her son's goose, that her son loves very much. But of course the thumb drive is not there. Yueling actually found a thumb drive on the ground without letting her employer know. She looks at what is inside the thumb drive, and it's not even the correct thumb drive. It's like another thumb drive that was thrown on the ground another day. Which means then that the boy's father actually did not even think to protect his wife. He was lying to her. He was only protecting himself. And perhaps the messages are not as obvious or on the nose as one would expect. But I do like this author's works. The last book, I Gave You Eyes and You Look Toward Darkness, by Irene Sola. This is translated from Catalan. It's the second book translated from Catalan that I've read. The first being The Garden of... The first one I read was really difficult, but this one was really good and not difficult at all. I was really surprised because I didn't expect myself to enjoy it so much. It's about this old woman who's about to die in her house, which is her house. Her name is Bernadetta. All the other women who have died before her, they are just there, like their spirits are in the house, waiting for her to die. Her own daughter is also there. Her granddaughter is also there. So this is like a multi-generational thing. There are at least like 5 or 6 generations of women right here, right now, in this house. The events of the novel span across a single day. There are 5 chapters, and each chapter focuses on the memories of one of the women in the house. We begin with the original matriarch, engineer of their situation. There is a reason why, after they die, they don't go to heaven, and they are tied to this house. They cannot leave this house. Their spirits are going to be in this house forever. It's all because a long time ago, their ancestor really wanted a husband. So she summoned the devil to make a deal with him. Okay, I can give you my soul if you give me a husband. So the devil gave her a husband. And then later on, when the devil came to collect his due, she said that the husband you gave me was not a whole husband. He's missing a pinky toe, so deal's off. And the devil was understandably really angry. So after that, every child that is born after that is missing something. Sometimes for an infant that leads to death, right? Like congenital defects do lead to death for infants. Generally, the women of the household, sometimes the thing that they are missing is not a physical thing, but it's something missing in their minds. It does seem like it could be a tragic situation or a horror movie situation, but it's neither of those, because these women, they could be chained to the house, but they don't care. They are so unbothered. They don't give a fuck. They just do what they want. They live how they want. They love who they want. Not a single one of them is like moping or feeling ashamed of herself. It's very buoying to read about their life stories. The writing style is very polyphonous, which sometimes can feel cacophonous, but I felt that the translation was really masterful. It is still readable. Another thing that's really interesting is how multi-generational this is, because the old woman's own daughter is there, like I mentioned, and she is using her phone to watch videos, and her granddaughter is also in the house. They're speaking in a contemporary language. Contrasted directly to that are the memories of the women's spirits that are still in the house, and they are talking about things like how to bake a particular bread. It really goes into the nitty-gritty of the recipe. There were so many recipes in this book. I was thinking, oh my gosh, maybe I should try cooking some of these recipes because they sound so good. It almost gave me a whiplash. On one hand, we have somebody using her phone to watch videos. On the other hand, we have this woman literally making a meal from scratch. And they're all in the same house. It's experimental, but I felt that experiment paid off. Very good. I would recommend this book if you're into literary fiction about women specifically. That's all for today. I'm gonna go for renfaire now. I don't know when the next video will be because, you know, Chinese New Year is coming up, the Lunar New Year. That means that the childcare center will be closed. So I'm gonna be very busy hanging out with my toddler. We'll see. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.